Welcome back to another episode of Practical Nutrition. I'm Cassie Dimmick.
I'm Alex Shantz.
And I'm Sarah Kostelnik.
And today we are talking about protein.
Whoop, whoop.
So we get a lot of questions about protein, and there is a lot of information out there about protein, lots of conflicting things. So we're hoping today that we can go over some of the science behind protein and clear up some questions you may have. Yeah. So we'll start with Sarah with some interesting facts about protein.
This stuff doesn't even surprise me anymore. So we like to look into the supplement industry, and because it's a very good way to make money. And so in 2018, the protein supplement industry was valued at over $4 billion, and that's so much money. But again, it doesn't really surprise me anymore at this point. Yeah. And think about it: if you buy into programs, or you're doing this diet or what, it always comes with some sort of meal replacement or protein shake and stuff like that. So that's why I'm not surprised. Additionally, 46% of Americans regularly consume protein drinks or powders. I have a quick funny story about this. So at the gym the other day, not here, someone was drinking their protein shake, and they're like, "You don't drink protein?" And I was like, "No, bro, I don't drink protein." He was like, "You're getting in the way of your gains." What do you mean you don't drink protein?
The way of your gains.
So I thought that was funny. And then last little fact here: the average American consumes about 100 grams of protein per day, which is equivalent to around 14 ounces of lean meat per day. Fun facts to start out this episode.
Yes, so very interesting. All right, so next we'll talk about what protein is and what it does, which I don't think a lot of people know all of the things that protein does.
Besides just give us gains.
Yeah, it does give us gains in the gym, yes, for sure. But proteins are molecules made up of amino acids, which a lot of people have heard of, that serve many functions in the body. There are 20 amino acids and that make up proteins, and how those are arranged in the order that those amino acids are in dictate the structure of the protein, which then dictates what it does in your body. So some examples of functions of proteins include hormones. A lot of people probably don't realize that hormones are proteins, and so they coordinate body functions, and things like growth hormones, insulin, those are proteins. Transporters, they're also transporters that carry substances around the body, such as hemoglobin. So that's part of something that transports things in blood, so like iron, ferritin, and albumin. Your lymph system also has carriers that are made up of protein. They make up body structure. That's the one that most people know. The muscles, it holds your body up, and things that contract muscles, that's also made out of protein. And enzymes, which we have tons of enzymes in our bodies, those carry out all of the chemical reactions that we experience on a daily basis. So amylase is one. That's something that will break down carbs in your body. So there are lots of important functions with enzymes. And then antibodies. So those are things that help with your immune system. So things like IgG, that's a protein. And so lots of different things in your body are made up of proteins. And so that's some of what it does. Now, Alex is going to talk about where we get it in our diet.
Yes, dietary sources of protein. So as we know, fish, meat, poultry, those are ones that we think of when we think of things that are high in protein. If you go to an elementary school, we say, what are things high in protein? They typically say chicken or something like that. So those are the ones that most people think of. They have more essential amino acids, which those are ones that we have to eat. So that's why people a lot of times gravitate towards meat, and it's an easy source of protein. But again, too much red meat and meats that are high in fats can cause weight gain, which we're going to go over here in a little bit. So it's important to be sure that we're picking lean meats most of the time. And then we have dairy, so our cheeses, yogurt, milk, that sort of stuff is a good source of protein. Whenever you are picking things like yogurt, you want to do a Greek yogurt if you can, because it's strained, so it has more protein in a concentrated area. And then nuts and seeds, peanut butter, all those things have protein. They do have fat as well, so we got to be sure we watch our portions, but they do contain protein. And then our legumes, so our soy products, beans, peas, lentils, green peas, people don't think about that kind of stuff sometimes having protein. So if you want to do more plant-based, those would be good options for that. And then vegetables. So I don't know if you knew that, people, but vegetables do have some protein, depending on the kind you're having, but spinach, 5 grams, artichokes, corn, avocado, kale, potatoes. All of those veggies have a little bit of protein in them. So whenever you're eating veggies, you're getting lots of micronutrients, but you're also getting protein. And then our whole grains. So if you're, again, more plant-based and you're wanting to do rice, I would always recommend trying to throw in some quinoa because quinoa is high in protein. And then things like whole wheat pasta, wild rice, millet, couscous, oatmeal, buckwheat. There's lots of things that contain protein that aren't just meats. So
yes,
yeah.
Very interesting. So
Yes.
lots of sources.
Yes.
So and now we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. And Sarah is going to talk to us about, is there a difference between the animal proteins that Alex just talked about and the plant proteins that she just talked about? Is there a difference?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is. So let's talk about that for a second. So we heard the term essential amino acids. So with animal-based proteins, a lot of them contain complete sources of protein. So they have all 9 essential amino acids, which is a good thing. And those essential amino acids are those that you must get through your diet and that your body cannot make on its own. And that's why they are termed essential, because we need them. And most plant-based sources of protein are termed incomplete proteins because they lack one or more of the essential amino acids. That's not a bad thing. It's just something that we know and that we have to think about, right? However, there is some exception to that. So soy, things like tofu, edamame, quinoa, all those things have the 9 essential amino acids, which again is a good thing. And so when we hear the term incomplete, I feel like that has a negative connotation associated with it when we're talking about plant-based proteins. And so plant-based proteins are often deemed inferior to animal-based ones because they are incomplete protein sources. Additionally, the protein found in plants can be slightly more difficult for your body to absorb compared with the protein in meat and other animal-based foods. However, the difference is likely too minimal to cause vegetarians or vegans to get an insufficient amount of protein or the essential amino acids from their diet. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, you can definitely 100% still meet your protein needs if you do not eat animal protein by eating a variety of the veggie protein sources. And like Alex listed, there are many besides meat, and that's a good thing for people who do avoid those animal-based products. And currently there's really not any evidence of protein deficiency among vegetarians or vegans when they're eating enough of a variety of foods. And of course, the exception to that would be people who are very restrictive or they're just not eating enough overall. So keep that in mind. You can eat plenty of plant-based protein sources, and it's nice to mix it up sometimes, and they're cheaper. They're cheaper than meat. So
yeah. Yes, so good. So you can get your protein from lots of different places, and it can meet your needs very easily. So how much protein do we need? I will talk about, and the answer is it depends. Lots of things. And again, this is, we're going to go over some generalizations here, and I'm going to explain some things because a lot of people don't understand the protein recommendations or how much protein they need to have. But a lot of people see the RDA, which is the recommended daily allowance, and that's 0.8 grams per kilo. And I'm going to put this into a gram for a 150 pound person because grams per kilo can get complicated. So all of these numbers I'm going to say would just be an example. Say a 150 pound person would need 54 grams of protein a day if they were meeting the RDA, which is 0.8 grams per kilo per day. And what that means is it's just adequate for 98% of the population to achieve nitrogen balance. And that's just a measure of your intake of protein versus how much protein you're putting out in your body. And you can excrete it through all sorts of ways and so in your body. So they want to look at the minimal amount that you need in order to stay in that positive nitrogen balance for 98% of the people. So what that doesn't mean is that optimal. It means that's the minimum. So I want to be clear about that because a lot of people use that argument as you only need 0.8 grams per kilo a day. Well, yes, that's what you need in order to function, but is that something that's optimal for health? And what research really is showing these days is maybe that's a little low for optimal health. And so what a lot of the research is showing is a 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo per day might be better for optimal health. And that's something that we typically would would recommend. And that looks more like 82 to 109 grams for that 150 pound person. And so just to give you reference, so that's almost, twice as much, or about twice as much as what that minimum amount is that might be best for optimal health. Athletes need more than the RDA as well for optimal performance and recovery. And again, these are people that are doing things not just sedentary. And the 0.8 does say for sedentary adults. We don't recommend that anyone's sedentary. so there's that. And so that's something that, you also need to remember. But for athletes, we recommend 1.2 to 1.7, which is almost the same as just the regular adult for optimal health. And so that looks like 82 to 116 grams for that 150 pound person. And then on the another factor is, are you restricting calories and trying to lose body fat? And if you are, research shows that even a little more protein can help you reach those goals and maintain your muscle mass while you're doing it. So for those people, it's actually 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilogram per day. And so that's 109 to 163 grams for that 150 pound person. And we always have ranges for things. You may do great at the low end of the range. If you're eating less high quality proteins, you might need to be in that higher end of the range. So there are lots of factors that can, factor into that as well. Also, what your calorie needs are, and so to reach your goals. And so there are always going to be ranges here. And then the other thing is your age. Older adults sometimes, as we get older, we don't create protein as well as we did when we were younger. One of the wonderful benefits of getting older. So unfortunately, you might have to think about protein a little more as you get older, and you need 1.1 to 1.3 grams a day if you're an older person at a minimum, really, to maintain your muscle mass. And as we get older, our muscle mass decreases naturally with age, and so resistance training and more protein helps prevent that, which means that you're going to stay independent, be able to do your activities of daily living for longer. And it's always about living better, not just living longer. You don't want to live a long time, have no muscle mass, not be able to do anything you want to do, and be sedentary. And so protein is really important for that. And then vegetarians may need to shoot for a little higher protein, like I said, on a higher protein end of the ranges that we discussed, because of the lower quality proteins. And again, that doesn't mean that they're bad proteins or negative in any way. It just means that you might need to have more of those to meet the same needs that you would have if you ate a bunch of animal products. So you see there's lots of different recommendations there, but hopefully that cleared up some of was the RDA enough? Is it not enough? But you see that it still is, as far as typical people in the United States with 100 grams, that's in most of those ranges for the recommendations that we would have. So let's talk about timing, because that's another big question that we have. Is that important, Alex?
No, I'm just kidding. Of course it is. Yes, timing is important. Timing is important with everything. So at your meals and snacks, protein evenly spaced throughout the day is more effective for building and maintaining muscle mass than large amounts at 1 to 2 meals per day. So it's important to be able to space it throughout the day. And if you're unsure of how to do that, a dietitian can absolutely help you to do that, because it helps to keep a neutral or positive nitrogen balance, which is what Cassie was talking about earlier. If you find yourself in a negative nitrogen balance, that's in times of like wound healing, starvation, when you have serious injuries, various diseases. So it's important to maintain that neutral or positive nitrogen balance. 20 to 40 grams of high quality protein is typically what we recommend per meal. So that's going to look like 3 to 4 ounces of your protein. It can lead to weight gain, however, if you have too much at different meals. So it's important to be sure that you space it throughout the day and stick to around that 20 to 40 grams of protein. And important as well after exercise. I know you've probably heard a lot about like taking a protein shake or something like that after exercise. We try to recommend food first the best we can, but again, supplements do have their place occasionally. But it can help you rebuild muscle and get your protein recommendations in after exercise if you have protein right after. That's when you're most likely to rebuild your muscle. So whenever you work out, you do break down your muscles. So having that protein within 30 minutes typically can help achieve that protein synthesis, so that's rebuilding your muscle. And we typically recommend 0.3 grams per kilo soon after your workouts. So for like a 150-pound person, that's about 20 grams of protein. And that's a place sometimes that we see people overdoing it quite often. So getting 2.5 to 3 scoops of protein powder is not going to be necessary. Sticking to that 0.3 grams per kilo would be ideal. And examples of that post-workout include like 3 ounces of protein, 3 ounces of lean meat, a cup of Greek yogurt or cottage cheese with granola and fruit, meal or snack with 2 cups of quinoa and 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds, or 1 cup edamame. Those are just examples of how we can get protein post-workout outside of doing like protein shakes and that sort of thing.
Yes, good. So, Sarah, I have a question for you. This is one that we get a lot. Is eating too much protein dangerous?
So if you're a healthy person with normal kidney function, there's absolutely no substantial information that says that a high protein intake is going to damage your kidneys, is going to harm you. Again, under normal circumstances. And so let's back that up a little bit. So this idea that high protein diets are dangerous stem from the thought that people with kidney disease or those that have altered kidney function should eat low protein or not too much protein. And so let's break that down. The amino acids that you consume from protein, they contain nitrogen, and specifically they contain an ammonia group. And so when that ammonia group is removed from its carbon skeleton, it's converted to urea in your system. And that's harmless, and urea must be excreted through the kidneys. And so the thought is that the more protein that you're eating, the more urea that you're excreting, and it's going to be harder on your kidneys. However, there are so many studies out there that prove that high protein diets do not harm your kidneys when your kidney function is normal. And so I found a very good study. It's a meta-analysis, which means it just reviews a whole bunch of studies out there. So they reviewed over 100 studies with over 1,300 total subjects consuming a moderately high protein, so 1.5 grams per kilo, or over 100 grams of protein intake total during the day. And so you've heard those numbers, at least in that range that we've talked about earlier already, versus a really low protein diet, which is under 5%, which sometimes is what, previously what medical doctors would recommend to those people who have chronic kidney disease to delay the progression of that and then ultimately have to be on dialysis. And so they looked for changes in their glomerular filtration rate, or their GFR, which is just an indicator of kidney function. And so they determined that there's absolutely no change in their GFR between the two groups, and that higher protein intakes do not appear to have a negative impact on kidney function in healthy people. So let's look at people that train and that are active. We see those people a lot here, and you listening, you might be one of them. So people that train and that consume a higher protein diet, their blood urea nitrogen, or their BUN, and their creatinine can be elevated. So these labs are also elevated in people that have kidney disease. And so, they have their labs tested, and I know my creatinine is a little bit, it's not elevated, but it's on the higher end, and I'm someone who resistance trains and is active, and I probably eat more protein than other sedentary women of my same age, height, and weight. And so they're like, oh my gosh, I have kidney disease, my BUN and my creatinine are elevated, when actually they just lift and they just eat a little bit more protein. And then when, you go and get your kidney function tested, like for me, example, my GFR is completely normal. I have nothing to worry about. So just because someone has an elevated BUN or creatinine does not mean that you have dysfunctioning kidneys by any means. It probably just means that you're active, that you eat higher protein for the most part, right? So always check with your doctor on those labs. And we really don't know if extremely high protein diets, so over 2 grams, over 3 grams for long periods of time are harmful. We have to think about the efficacy of testing that on subjects in research. And so if you're intentionally putting someone at harm's risk, we don't really do that in research. So there's not a lot of evidence out there for long-term periods of time. And so with that being said, they're likely unnecessary, and they really don't provide any additional benefits like increasing your lean mass, improving your fat loss, beyond just meeting the protein recommendations that we listed above. So while that extra protein and getting enough protein can help you with your fat loss goals, extra protein beyond what you can use really just gives you more calories, which can negatively impact your body fat loss goals.
Yes. Very good
Boom.
information. Yes. So if you want to know about your kidney function, the GFR is what Sarah talked about, is what you would look at on your lab value. And you want that to be higher than 60 is typically what the range is for people. So the problem that we see out there is that people who may know some things about nutrition might recommend that 2 to 3 grams per pound to people and not know if they have an underlying kidney issue. And people may not know if they have an underlying kidney issue. And so that's where it might be dangerous. And again, we don't know that, but a lot of this hasn't really been studied. But what we do know is you can only use so much protein, and 2 to 3 grams is way more than what we see you can use in research. And so that's per pound, we're saying per pound. So a lot of the other numbers we said per kilo. And so if you're getting way over a gram per pound, if you think about it that way, so however much you weigh, if you're getting way over that, double that, then that's probably excessive and isn't really helping you get any additional gains in the gym. And so that's something. And one thing we see, that the spreading out of your protein, that's something that is so important. And that's what I know I see with my clients that they need to work on the most. A lot of people get very low protein at breakfast, for example, or their protein sources are mostly fat, like sausage or bacon, those kinds of things. So that lean protein source at breakfast is really important for people. And then they might eat a 12-ounce steak at dinner, and that's way too much. And so just trying to balance that out is really important. So in summary, get the amount of protein that you need. Protein is really important. It's something that everybody needs to get in. And so whatever group you're in that we mentioned before, make sure that you're getting those protein needs. If you aren't sure about where you should be because of your goals or your age or whatever you're trying to do, we can help you, of course. A registered dietitian can look at everything and tell you how much protein that you need. And then the spacing out, like I said, is just as important as the total number. And so making sure that makes sense for you as well. And lastly, protein supplements, Alex just mentioned this briefly, but they're not absolutely necessary. I guess Sarah did too. And so they're not absolutely necessary if you're not doing protein shakes. That's okay. So if you are doing protein shakes because that helps you meet your protein needs, it's easy for you, you like them, whatever, that's fine too. And so real food does work really well, and protein shakes can work really well as well. And so just be sure that you're doing one that you check the ingredient list, you make sure it's certified safe for sport, and it doesn't have anything in it. We don't typically recommend any kind of mass gain supplements because those are often contaminated with steroids or precursors to steroids or other things that you may not want to be getting, and they may work really well for you to get those gains in the gym, but why are they working that well? So you have to consider that. So just some more of the basic proteins, and protein powders that are whey-based are going to have better results for muscle rebuilding than protein powders that are plant-based typically. So just so people know that as well. But that doesn't mean you have to do those. Again, you're just going to get a little bit better of a result from a whey-based protein. And that can go for, yogurt as well. So I know Alex mentioned some other plant-based options for people that are vegetarians for after a workout, and that's going to be a great option. The yogurt or dairy, if you're lacto-ovo-vegetarian, is going to give you a little bit better boost after a workout. So just thinking about your timing, making sure you're getting it in, knowing how much you need to get, and having healthy sources is really the bottom line of what we recommend. And so that's it for today. I hope that we answered some of your questions about protein. And remember, you don't need to just focus on getting only the minimum, and more of that's not needed, because what we're seeing really is that a little more than the RDA is actually better for optimal health. And that's what we all want, is to be the best that we can be, achieving our best, right?
Yeah, love it.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.